Welcome to ASU STS317. We've been going over some very difficult work the past couple of weeks as we've tried to understand how international relations philosophies end up affecting globalization in science and technology. And I think that you guys have done a really good job, especially the people that were dealing with the realism philosophy, the Marxism philosophy, and the deconstructionist strategy and the constructionist international relations philosophy. I did have a couple concerns that you understood liberalism in the international relations philosophy domain as well as idealism. So I want to give you a little bit of history, especially of idealism and how it plays, and especially in its dialectical relationship with realism. Throughout the history of both Indian, as in India, and Greek thought and Western thought, there has been a push and pull between people who believed that what was real was what we could see and taste and hear, what we call materialism, and that everything else had no existence, and a strong predilection to believing that what was ideal was really real, so that you saw in Plato's Republic the idea that it was the idea of the good that was the basis for establishing a good society. So that would be called idealism. And materialism, in the Greeks there was Epicurus and Democritus, and then there was Hobbes in the philosophical field that came later. In terms of materialism and realism in international relations philosophy, Machiavelli's The Prince is perhaps one of the best recognized experts on the belief that there is no ideals or moral goods, and that power is an end in and of itself. So the idealism really dominated philosophy from Plato through Aristotle, through Aquinas, and into the Middle Ages. And it had its consequences. It really held back science, and it wasn't really until Francis Bacon really reintroduced the whole concept of materialism and the scientific method that we saw the kind of breakthroughs in science and technology that have really come to really dominate our society. Out of Bacon, developed the whole concept of positivism of Comte, and that has really driven science and technology. Now, back 200 years ago, philosophers realizing this contradiction and this thesis and antithesis between materialism and idealism, Hegel came along and basically saw them in idealism and materialism in a dialectical relationship that created a higher synthesis and drove history forward. So basically it was this conflict between idealism and materialism that was ultimately reconciled in actually a type of idealism. Marx actually tried to turn Hegel on his head and say that it wasn't the development of mind that was driving history, but it was actually material factors, especially class conflict, but actually also science and technology that were driving history and ideas and mind forward. Idealism after World War I, and the devastation of World War I, people looked back to Kant and said, yes, it's possible for us to create a better world based on the ideas, and we had the League of Nations. When that failed, idealism really took a downfall, and with World War II, and then you saw with the establishment of the United Nations afterwards an attempt to reassert a kind of neo-idealism where you had international law and international constitutions, but you had the realism of giving the 5 most powerful countries the ability to veto the actions of the United Nations. Legal positivism developed as a legal tradition and said basically that the only laws were the laws on the books. This was actually really challenged by the Nuremberg trials, where where the Nazis were put on trial for violating the law, except the only fact was there was no laws that they were violating. So that the Allied lawyers appealed to some sort of human laws that the Nazis were tried on those bases. So legal positivism took a real big hit, and this is a real challenge, basically, that the international system faces. Are there laws that govern human behavior that are beyond those embodied in treaties and constitutions? So we have the whole positivism. In terms of liberalism, liberalism is not just sort of as we in the United States understand liberalism in the United States as opposed to conservatism, but it is basically a belief that the individual can make individuals interacting among themselves in the marketplace and in government through democracy can result in positive political and economic solutions. So this is the liberal attitude, and it's been very successful in the United States and in Europe, where we've seen liberal democracies. And Fukuyama, in his book *The End of History*, with the collapse of communism, it's really seen the liberal democracy as being the end game for pretty much every country in the world. Since that time, we've actually seen this being challenged, especially by Al-Qaeda and the jihadists and people, and even China, who say that this is the liberal democracy is not the end game. So anyway, so that is what liberalism is, and it's important. That's what liberalism is, and it is a very dominant view, in the West. So I think we've covered idealism and liberalism. I think if you look on the class bulletin board, there's a really good discussion of constructivism. Basically, the view to even start talking about international relations philosophies is actually to have a constructivist viewpoint, basically saying that your philosophy ends up conditioning your view of science and technology and your politics. So anyway, I encourage you to read that. If you have any questions at all about these international relation philosophies, please send me a message and I'll try and clarify them for you. These are going to be very important for the midterm. If you don't still get what the international relationships philosophies are, I recommend going to the Hayden Library and pulling up this book, The Globalization of World Politics, that is on reserve. And this has got a great section on international relations philosophies, and so I think that would help clarify it. For next week, you need to read technology. Let's see if I got that. Technology and international transformation, about the atom bomb and the railway. And it's really important when you read this to see how he's trying to he doesn't want to be a materialist and say that science and technology is the only thing that is conditioning the state, nor does he want to be a realist and say that what is really real is the state. So I want you to look at, and when you read this book, see how he's trying to weave between the traditions of constructivism, materialism, and idealism. And so I know you haven't been exposed a lot to the debate in international relations, but this is a really good thing. The midterm, there's going to be two questions on the midterm. One is going to be based on The Economist, and one is going to be on this book. So read this book, take good notes. You're going to have 2 hours to answer 2 questions. If you have not gotten The Economist now, you need to go to the online resource, and it is available under ProQuest, and read since the last week in August the Economist magazine, so you'll be prepared for the questions. So if you have any questions about the midterm, let me know. I'm really enjoying this class and hope you are too. Again, feel free to give me a call or email me if you have any questions. Take care and good luck.